white clover. Okay, you know, white clover's been around for a good long time in Florida. We developed Osceola back before I was even in graduate school. Louisiana S1's a very old variety, and Rigoladano has been out for a number of years. Our most recent release is called Ocoee. I've talked to you about that when we first released it, and I recommended to you during the January update. So Ocoee is now on the market. Allied Seed Company has it, so it should be available through southern states. And Osceola now is going to be marketed by Behrenbruch. So they'll have, I believe it's Regal Grays and Osceola, and Behrenbruch's very good about getting their seed supplies out here into Florida. Durana is a Georgia variety, kind of low-growing, not very productive or as productive, but it's in for a long time, very popular for wildlife food plots. So there are your white clovers, and don't forget, white clovers grow real well statewide as long as you have fairly good wet soils, wet sites. We can grow white clover from here to the Keys. Okay, next. Okay, red clover. A couple of new happenings. We have the Southern Belle, which is a Florida release, and Barduro. Those are our two latest releases. Southern Belle is non-dormant, so if you want your red clover to get up and get out of the ground quickly, Southern Belle be a real good one. Barduro, Red Ace, and Bulldog Red are a little bit later. And something I do at home is just a thought for when you talk with your cattlemen. Jose and Dubé and Cheryl Makoviak and I have been trying to suggest, particularly to northern cattle ranchers, to think about putting clovers or medics or even alfalfa overseeded in the fall of the year over their Bahia grass or Bermuda grass pastures to, one, produce some low level of nitrogen that's recycled into the summer grasses, and also just to, you know, provide a little bit better quality forage for livestock. But what I see, particularly with red clover, is if you put red clover in like crimson, which is a pretty forgiving clover, if you use red clover though in that mix with other clovers, it can run and stay in the sward through the summer if you have adequate rainfall. So our farm is in Gaston County, Florida, and we have red clover in with our Bahia grass right now. And you do that by using the Barduro, the Red Ace, the Bulldog Red, slightly later maturing types of red clovers. And then the Southern Belle was a little bit earlier. But right now, the Barduro is what I see in my pastures at home. So if you've never done anything with clovers in the wintertime over perennial summer grass pastures, is just a thought. And certainly those of us who have clients with very good soil, it does take a reasonable amount of soil moisture, but you might want to consider red clover. Most of those clovers come already pre-inoculated because red clover takes a specific inoculant. Pretty much all the legumes take specific inoculants. Don't forget that when I'm talking to clients about seed. Getting pre-inoculated seed may be a safety method, just to make sure they get the right rhizobium with the right clover or right legume. Okay, crimson clover, it's still a very short list. Dixie is basically common. That's what's on the market. When you go to any of the feed and seed stores and buy crimson clover, typically what you're getting is Dixie. There is some AU Robin out there. It is an Auburn release, but they had trouble with seed production. But if you want a very early crimson clover, AU Robin should be coming back on the market. There may be a little bit out there this year. Mostly what you'll see is Dixie. Okay, arrowleaf clover. Again, it's a short list. The oldest one was Uchi. A lot of us who use arrowleaf refer to arrowleaf as Uchi, but there are new varieties. Apache was the next line that came out of Texas A&M after Uchi, and it actually has some resistance to a virus that gets on arrowleaf clover. But the newest release is called Black Hawk. So we could really cut to the chase and just recommend Black Hawk, but there isn't a lot of seed out there on the market. So if someone's interested in growing arrowleaf, I would recommend first that they try to locate the Black Hawk, and then Apache, and then Uchi. I have to mention a couple of maybe not as popular clovers because I think they have merit. This is Balanza clover. it was in a lot of wildlife food plot material a few years ago, and I saw that it grows very well, particularly if you have well-drained soils and good soil quality. And the only variety on the market is called Fixation. Back in the 1950s, Mike's Clover was released by Auburn. So Mike's Clover, and I never knew what happened to it. It looked pretty well adapted, and then you didn't see it on the market. Well, that's because no seed company really got behind it and marketed it. But it's very well adapted here. But it does like to be incorporated into the soil, so you do want to drill it in, and you don't want a lot of competition with it like a lot of ryegrass. So if you're looking for a well-adapted clover, I thought the seed prices were fairly reasonable, and Fixation would be the bonanza clover of choice. Ball clover, I've been a big advocate for ball clover. Seed's relatively cheap, comes out to maybe $12 an acre, maybe a little bit more. But a couple of varieties on the market now, Don, which is named after Don Ball, and Grazer Select. They're both two ball clovers out of Texas, but very well adapted here. And then Segrist also markets a ball clover. Great for overseeding on perennial summer grasses like Bermuda and Bahia. Produce a lot of forage a little bit later in the spring than something like crimson. So if you want to put a group together, mixing crimson and ball and maybe a red clover would be a good combination. Berseem clover is one I've always liked. Berseem looks a lot like an alfalfa, but it's not as commonly grown. It used to be years ago. I think a lot of it's because there isn't much seed that feed and seed stores stock. But Big B is the old variety that we recommend. Does well in fairly droughty soils. And there's a new variety on the market called Frosty, and I like both of them very much. They've done well in trials. So two Berseem clovers if you want to try something a little novel. You know where I see Berseem mostly is in wildlife food plots. So those of you out there who are working with your wildlife enthusiasts, I would add Berseem clover in the mix. It usually does as well or better than alfalfa in our area.